With the coalition in ashes, the dream of a restored Han died. The great warlords, who had sworn to save the empire, now turned on each other, seeking only to save themselves. They were no longer allies, but wolves fighting over the carcass of a dying dynasty. In the north, Yuan Shao used his prestigious family name to seize control of the largest armies. In the south, Sun Jian fought to carve out a kingdom for his family, the stolen imperial seal burning a hole in his ambition. And in the central plains, Cao Cao, having learned a bitter lesson about relying on others, returned to his home province. He began to build his power base not through noble titles, but through raw talent, recruiting wise advisors and fierce generals regardless of their background. The age of heroes was over. The age of kings had begun. In this new world of ambition and conquest, Liu Bei found himself adrift. He was a hero with a noble name, but without a home. His small army, brave as it was not enough to claim territory of his own. With few options, he and his brothers sought refuge with his old classmate, the warlord Gongsun Zan, in the northeast. They served him loyally, fighting his battles and defending his borders, but they were guests, not masters. For Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, serving under another man's banner was a quiet humiliation. For Liu Bei, it was a time of deep uncertainty. He had proven his valor at Hulao Pass, but in the cold game of thrones being played across China, valor without land was worth very little. During a fierce battle against a rival warlord, Gongsun Zan was ambushed and surrounded. Just as he faced certain death, a single rider on a white horse charged through the enemy ranks. This was Zhao Yun, the Dragon of Changshan, a young warrior of breathtaking skill and heroic spirit. He moved with the grace and power of a mythological beast, his spear a flash of silver lightning that scattered all before him. He rescued Gongsun Zan and turned the tide of the battle. Later, Liu Bei met the young hero, and the two felt an instant, profound connection. Liu Bei saw in Zhao Yun a spirit of true loyalty and righteousness, while Zhao Yun saw in Liu Bei the kind of truly benevolent leader he had been searching for. Though they parted ways for a time, a bond was forged that destiny would not allow to be broken. While Liu Bei searched for his purpose, a crisis was unfolding in the prosperous Su province. The governor, Dao Qian, was a kind and respected man who had kept his people safe from the ravages of war. But he had made a fatal mistake. His subordinates, tasked with escorting Cao Cao's father through the province, had murdered the old man and stolen his wealth. This act of senseless greed would bring down upon them a terrible and indiscriminate wrath. Dao Qian, knowing he could not face the coming storm alone, sent desperate pleas for help to all the surrounding warlords. But in this new era of self-interest, no one was willing to risk their armies to save a neighbor. His pleas were met with silence. When news of his father's murder reached Cao Cao, his grief quickly curdled into a bottomless well of rage. In the rigid hierarchy of Han society, filial piety, the duty to one's parents, was the highest virtue. The murder was not just a personal tragedy. It was an unforgivable insult to his honor and his family name. He did not care that Governor Dao Qian was not personally responsible. In his eyes, the entire province was complicit in the crime. He swore an oath of vengeance, not just against the murderers, but against every man, woman, and child in Su. He gathered his entire army and marched south, not as a general seeking justice, but as an executioner coming to collect a debt of blood. Cao Cao's vengeance was a thing of horror. His army swept into Su province like a plague, and where they went, civilization ceased to exist. They did not distinguish between soldier and civilian, guilty or innocent. Entire towns were put to the sword. Men, women, and children were slaughtered by the tens of thousands. The devastation was so complete that the Sea River became choked with bodies, its waters dammed by the dead. This was not war. It was a massacre, an act of such profound brutality that it would forever stain Cao Cao's name. He proved to the world that while he was a brilliant strategist, he was also capable of monstrous cruelty, willing to sacrifice any principle for the sake of his ambition and his rage. Dao Qian's desperate plea for help finally reached Liu Bei. His commander, Gongsun Zan, was reluctant to get involved, but he allowed Liu Bei to take his own small force, along with a few thousand reinforcements. For Liu Bei, there was no choice to be made. While other warlords saw a foolish risk, he saw a moral duty. He was a descendant of the Han, sworn to protect its people. How could he stand by while thousands were being slaughtered? It was a suicidal mission to pit his tiny army against the full might of Cao Cao, but it was the right thing to do. In a world of cynical warlords, Liu Bei's compassion was his greatest weakness and also his most profound strength. He marched to Su, not for gain or glory, but because his conscience demanded it. As Liu Bei marched to save Su province, his salvation came from an unlikely and treacherous source. Far to the north, the warrior Liu Bu, having assassinated Dong Zhuo but been driven from the capital himself, was also a hero adrift. Seeing that Cao Cao's home base was left nearly defenseless, Liu Bu saw a golden opportunity. In a swift and brilliant campaign, he stormed into Yan province, capturing city after city. When news reached Cao Cao that his entire home territory was about to be stolen out from under him, he was forced to abandon his bloody campaign in Su. With his own house on fire, he had no choice but to turn his army around and race back to deal with the immediate threat of Liu Bu. Su province was saved, not by a hero, but by the opportunism of a devil. Liu Bei arrived in Su province as a savior. The people hailed him, and the elderly Dao Qian was overcome with gratitude. But the ordeal had shattered the old governor's health, and he soon fell gravely ill. On his deathbed, he summoned Liu Bei and his chief advisors. He declared that his own sons were not fit to rule, and that the only man with the virtue and ability to protect the province was Liu Bei himself. He offered to pass the governorship of the entire province over to him. Liu Bei, in his humility, refused multiple times, feeling he was unworthy of such a high honor. But Dao Qian insisted, and with his dying breath, he pleaded with Liu Bei to accept the responsibility and protect his people. The wandering hero was being offered the one thing he had always lacked: a home. After Dao Qian's death, the people of Su province pleaded with Liu Bei to become their new lord. With the encouragement of his brothers, he finally accepted. The man who had been a weaver of sandals, a volunteer soldier, and a hero without a home was now the governor of a prosperous and important province. He finally had a base from which to pursue his dream of restoring the Han. But this great victory came with an even greater peril. He was no longer an insignificant drifter. He was now a major player on the board, a lord with land and resources. And in doing so, he had placed himself directly in the path of the most ambitious man in the empire, Cao Cao, who now viewed him not just as a righteous fool, but as a rival who occupied the province he considered his own.